Well, hello, everyone, and thanks for joining for the last Connect, Reflect, and Learn meeting with this Cred 30-day challenge. I'm excited today because we get to see the full, results, except for what's coming in today, because I have 2 more Connects to do. But today we have Ronan Mac Domhnaill and Stephen McDonnell, who are going to lead us through this last session. So I will hand it over to you, Ronan.
Thank you very much. It's great to have a Mac Domhnaill and a McDonnell
Yes, I'm not related that either.
I'm not related at all. Thanks, Vinny. I know this in one sense, the 30 days has probably flown by, and in another sense, it's been a tough number of weeks as well. So I want to start off by really acknowledging everybody who's been part of the community, week in, week out, and who's shared their own experiences on learning. And it's been, I'm sure, very invaluable for others in the community. And also the commitment to use a mobile app as well. We know it is effortful as well. And our brain gives ourselves an excuse not to do it. So I want to acknowledge you all for doing it. So just in terms of setting the context, so we're here today as part of a 30-day mental health and wellbeing challenge in partnership with Ireland Together and Cred. And the reason we're doing this challenge is to help everyone navigate this time, to have a sense of connection, and to use this opportunity, if it's appropriate for you, to build some strong habits. And why are we here today? Well, we're here to connect, reflect, learn, and also celebrate. Too often we move on to the next thing. And we've had the pleasure of listening to Steve and Bridget talk about ritual. So we're trying to build celebration into ritual. So part of this community is slowing down. We want to connect. We want to reflect. Steve McDonnell is going to share some wonderful insights with us, but also we want to make time to just slow down and celebrate as a community and acknowledge ourselves. So in terms of today, Stephen's going to kick us off with a brief connection exercise. He's going to hand back to me, and I'm going to do that arrival and check-in. We'll look at the dashboard, and we'll share the totals, have a look at the insights and share the totals. And then I'll hand back to Stephen, who's going to share some of his insights and experience and some really practical tools and tips with us. And then we'll summarize and wrap up at the end by saying how you can stay connected, how you can keep on using the Cred mobile app, and hand back to Mindy to talk about some of the exciting initiatives that are coming up. So my absolute pleasure to hand to Stephen now to lead us through a connection exercise. Thanks, Stephen.
Good morning, everybody, and it's great to be here. Thanks for the invitation. I suppose the really interesting thing as I was thinking about this, and we were talking with Ronan last night, is what people actually think is connection. It's one of those weird things. We tend to think externally as well. So what I do this morning is just actually reverse that and just do an internal connection, connect with ourselves, because it's something that we tend to, when we're busy with lots going on, we can tend to forget that we need to connect with ourselves. And the reason why I love this approach, we communicate externally, and we generally operate at around about 200 words a minute. If you're from Galway, 300. But it tends to be at quite a high pace. But believe it or not, internally, we're operating at about 600 words a minute, even when we're not saying anything. So just going to lead you through just a small breathwork practice, just to slow it down, just to connect with ourselves, and just to listen to what's being said inside our own minds. Not necessarily connecting with that, but connecting with that language, with that voice. Okay? So what we're going to go through today is one of my favorites. It's called a box breathing exercise. A box breathing exercise is really good for bringing us, if we're in any sort of triggered state, back to a state of relaxation, back to a state of zero, as I like to call it. So you're neither one nor the other. The reason why that works very well is when you're in a state of anxiety, when your body's getting ready to do something, it tends to breathe at quite a high pace of high speed of internal inhale and exhale, and the pause tends to be quite short. So where box breathing works really, really effectively is you're forcing that pause. You're actually telling your brain, even though your brain might be in a bit of a whirligig, your body's instructing your brain, there's nothing to fear here. And it allows the brain to start to relax and start to calm down. So with your permission, if you could do this with eyes closed if you want, or if you want to have your eyes just slightly focused, with soft gaze. What's nice is if you're sitting or standing, just lengthen your spine and just to relax your shoulders. And just get comfortable there. Just settling with yourself, seeing how you're feeling, recognizing sensations in your body, recognizing feelings that are going through your body, and also recognizing thoughts that have just ran through your head that you didn't half expect. So what we're going to do is I'm going to guide you through the inhale, the pause, the exhale, and the pause, and each are going to be 4 seconds. We'll do that just for a couple of short minutes. As you're doing this, just mindful of what thoughts are going through your mind. See them, recognize them, but let them go on. There's no point in acknowledging them at the moment. They're not serving us just at the moment. So take a nice deep full breath in and hold, and breathe out, fully emptying your lungs, and hold. And in, hold, breathe out, and hold. And take a nice deep full breath in, filling the lungs all the way to the belly, holding that in, fully exhaling, emptying the lungs completely, holding that empty position, getting ready for the next fresh breath of air coming in. And take a nice deep breath in through the nose, nice clean fresh air refreshing the body, holding and releasing. Release all the tension that's in your body, tension that you might be holding onto, and hold. And breathe in and hold. A nice breath out and hold. And your next breath in, deep in. What's your intention for today? Have a thought about that. And hold. And as you breathe out, what are you letting go of now? And hold. And breathe in. We'll do one more cycle. And hold. And fully breathe out. Let it all go. Let it empty it out completely. And when you have that breath release, just return, open your eyes, return and have a look at everybody in the room who's been sharing that experience with you. And thank you very much for letting me guide you through that.
Thank you, Stephen. Great exercise.
Big fan of that.
Yeah. It's another tool in a toolbox that we have to use. Just a quick show of hands. Who's used that before? Who's come across that technique before? Yeah. Okay, great. I think for many of us in this community, it's not a lack of access to tools of information. It's how do we remember to do those things, and have them at our disposal when we need them. So thank you, Stephen. And it's hopefully helped us become present as we prepare for our check-in. So if you're using the mobile app, I encourage you to just take it out now and open the check-in page, and let's check in together. And if you're not using the app, just encourage you to find the best way that supports you to complete our exercise today. So the first element is to just notice your energy level. Coming up to 10:15 in Ireland, 11:15 in mainland Europe, if anyone's joining us. I don't know if Michael's on the call. And 9:15 here in Sydney. So just take a moment to notice. How's the battery feel? Green, amber, or red? So now take a moment to notice what word or combination of words describe how you feel. Just notice with curiosity, without judging yourself. Stephen invited us to become aware of our thoughts in our last exercise. So was there anything that just maybe percolated to the top? Is there anything that's popping around? Just notice what's top of mind for you. And take a moment to record it in the app or in your reflection notes. And before we share the dashboard, Stephen invited us to think and start our day with intention. Just want you to notice what your energy levels are and how you're feeling. What are you needing today? What's your body needing? If you had kids return to school, is it a day of R&R? Is it a day of managing your own expectations? Do you need a bit of self-care? We know self-care is not selfish. Or if the energy is high, what energy can you bring to your interactions and conversations today? Also invite you to think about, is there anything others can do to support you today? Many of the community are entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, and we tend to give and do a lot and bring a lot of energy to our interactions. We don't prioritize self. We tend to have big to-do lists. So it's anything you can just ask somebody else to either something you need them to do or to be to support you today. Just take a moment to think about what you're needing today. Okay, I'll hit refresh on the page and see what happens. See what's been reflected. So firstly, we'll start off with just a reflection of the energy at the moment, energy across maybe the last week or so. Then we'll have a review of how people are feeling. And then we'll have a look at our impact. And like any good live TV, I'm going to restart this window. So bear with me for a second.
No worries. Between everyone showing up as Colin Harris today, we can just blame Zoom for everything.
Zoom gets blamed for so much stuff, doesn't it? Okay. So we did notice, I think someone said at the start of the call, that the weather's been wonderful over the weekend and that impacted people's energy. So hopefully that's reflected on our dashboard. Come on, Power BI. It's thinking. Okay.
I've noticed a couple of Microsoft apps being slow this morning as well.
We play Microsoft as well. I love it.
Yeah. Trying to get into webmail this morning was quite a challenge.
Zoom and Microsoft.
It's the usual thing. It's anything but me.
Anything but me.
Absolutely, yes.
This was refreshing beautifully a few minutes ago before we started the call. Okay, it's coming up now. So first of all, maybe the feelings will come up first. So let's notice, okay, so energy has popped up now. So there's quite a lot of green energy. Last 24 hours, almost 70%. And the average across the 30 days has been about 60%, almost 60%. There's been a bit of a pickup. We noticed there's no red energy. And we're hearing birds chirping in the background there somewhere. That's perfect. I don't know who it is. Oh, that sounds fantastic. And then if I look at the energy across the weeks, it's interesting. I think there was a bit of a lull and a dip last week. But throughout, we've increased from at the start of week 1 to almost over just over 59% to almost 64%. But the amber energy across the month has gone down from 34 to 27. Red has just gone up a little bit in this last week, but I think that's reflected by last week, in the middle of last week, there seemed to be, I don't know, something happened Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday last week. There was, if that coincides with anything around announcements or lockdown, extended lockdowns, there was a noticeable red in the energy last week. So I guess part of this, we want to help normalize everybody. And, we've talked about this many times. You are a positive community and a positive influence, but remember to manage your own energy as well. Then just have a look at top 3 feelings. So there's a bit of a tie here. So we've got calm, focused, grateful, and optimistic in this last 24 hours. And the prevailing ones are calm, happy, and grateful. Now, I would suggest as a community of practitioners here as well, I think you are more in tune with some of those things around gratitude as well. And, I think the optimistic comes up. We need to be naturally optimistic as founders and as SMEs as well. I was even gone up to 70% now in the last couple of moments as people have checked in. And if I look at all feelings right across the group, we've got calm, happy, grateful, focused. Stephen talked about last week, language is very important. This could be representation of being more mindful. There's still some tiredness, almost 8%, but optimistic, confident, rested, pensive, excited, and curious. So many of you might be familiar with the SCAR framework, and we feel like we've got a lot of toward emotions registers here as well. So just be mindful of not labeling, not trying to label too much as bad emotions. Part of this exercise is an emotional labeling exercise. We want to support the community to build their emotional vocabulary. Just going to see the comments here if I'm missing anything. Any connections? Okay. Oh, it's So I thought it was saying that the upbeat in the energy was Malia's meditations with Mia that was causing the uplift.
One thing.
Maybe it was Ronan.
Oh, sorry.
Take the credit for it.
Well deserved. One thing I was gonna say, Ronan, is that with the tiredness, like, I think sometimes it's hard to associate what's going on physically and then your emotions. So if you've had a really bad night's sleep, you can be very tired, but actually doesn't necessarily mean that your emotions are in a bad state. You could be very happy, optimistic, grateful, but then that tiredness, you know, is kind of dragging you down. So I think this is very helpful actually to label, what am I actually feeling emotionally? You know, am I upset or anxious or whatever, or am I just tired? And can I deal with that, you know, in the evening and park that for a little while until I get some sleep?
Yeah, great observation, Jennifer. And I think one of the things we've talked about in this last month has been it being okay that those roller coasters of emotions can coexist at the same time. I can feel this and this. And I think most of us are wondering, well, how can I feel that and that? So to be knowing that they can be a different size of spectrum. Thanks, Jennifer. And to maximize obviously the time that Stephen has, let's get to the big reveal. I know, Mindy, you might have got a sneak peek there inadvertently, but we challenge to see how many actions and impacts could we create as a community in this 30 days. We were creating sustainable habits and hopefully changing behaviors for ourselves, but we knew we'd have a positive impact and a ripple effect on the mental health and well-being of others in the community, outside of this community. So happy to reveal the total actions and impacts so far. There's still a few more hours to go. It's going to update now in a moment. So 822 actions completed, 153 mindful minutes, 11,000 minutes of movement, and probably most proudly, 540 people outside of this community have benefited from a call or a check-in. So I want to take a moment to acknowledge everybody. It's a huge achievement. I know the actions, they might by themselves seem small, but when you put them all together, they have a huge compounding impact. Mindy, can I invite, is anybody, Mindy or anybody else like to share any comments before we move on? We will do a bit of asking everybody just to reflect at the end, but anyone want to share a comment at the moment? An observation?
Yeah, this is great. Like I know we had some really high targets set, but I'm really impressed with what we've actually accomplished here. And not only those mindful minutes, like I've noticed every day I'm adding more minutes to my mindfulness, pretty unintentionally. So I'm thrilled with that.
Well, actually last week was the most mindful week. So I think some of the numbers in our community have dropped down, but actually some of the impact is increased. So the community are actually doing more mindfulness. So we had, first week was 1,110 mindful minutes, 1,100 mindful minutes. And we dropped down a little bit to 791, picked up to 825, but almost 1,400 mindful minutes. And I've had this conversation with a group of my friends who are doing a 30-day challenge, all based in Ireland. And I think I said this last week, they're off the scale because we're 45-year-old males. Like 8,000 minutes of movement and about 200 minutes of mindfulness. And I'm like, I'm trying to fill that gap. Like, let's build a UK video. So you're the converted. I think Stephen Pritchard said this a couple weeks ago. This is the converted group, but it's you obviously know the benefits of mindfulness, and so trying to bring other people on the journey is is challenging but fun as well.
I think a great insight in the data as well is the actual measured impact that you can directly relate to governmental announcement. Yes. That for me is phenomenal, because that's probably the first, let's call it real data in relation to the personal impact people are feeling around the announcements. Like there's a lot of ESRI information around what people are feeling, but that's directly related to the announcement itself. Like that for me is phenomenal data. And actually, Joanne, I mean, that's probably a good PR piece as well to be able to use.
Yeah, I think so. And actually what we're seeing as well is coupled with that, actually, because the sentiment survey comes in real time as well, we can see that from January homeschooling had such an impact. So you can actually see it's getting worse and worse as opposed to better. Now, my only regret, Ronan, is that I haven't been more involved in this challenge because of homeschooling, because I literally could not see the wood from the trees until Monday. And yesterday, Mindy was my first call yesterday morning. It was like Christmas morning for me. It was like, woo! Not that I love my kids dearly, but I really value my focus in the morning as well. So yeah, so I'm regretting not getting more involved.
So we've a couple of maxims in Cred, and it's nice to be able to say this to an Irish community, because I say this to people all around the world. I say, one, no Irish guilt. Okay, so we got that big giant reset button. We can hit that every day. And the second one is we need to put our own oxygen mask first before we help others. So you as a community of entrepreneurs get that. So now we obviously want to make the app continuously available to the Ireland Together community. So love for people to keep using it and support the other initiatives and activities. Thanks, Joanne. So
Thank you,
I'm going to stop sharing this and hand to Stephen now, who's going to lead us through the next part of that learn exercise, and is going to share some wisdom and experience and tools and tips. Thanks, Stephen.
No problem. I suppose the first thing, I actually pulled this off my whiteboard, just as you were saying earlier on. That's my creed every morning when I walk into the office. It is important that we take care of ourselves and give ourselves that permission as well. And I think it's the permission part is the part that we all tend to find a bit difficult to do, because, like you say, like that Irish guilt is a great thing. And I think, Joanne, you explained this perfectly. And like, you guys know me in wording. I've moved away from calling it homeschooling. It's emergency education. Homeschooling is a choice. Emergency education is a not, and it has an impact, and that impact goes on over time as well. So listen, I'm going to share some bits and pieces. A fair bit of it you might know, a fair bit of it you may not know, or may not be aware of, or may need a reminder of. So on that basis, enjoy, and let's have 5 or 10 minutes just to look at stress, anxiety, that kind of discussion topic. And again, I'm going to pick into those words a little bit as well. And like the sign says, focusing on minding your head, which is, I think, is the important part of everything we do at the moment. Yeah, we are a group of odd eggs. And like Ronan said earlier on, Stephen mentioned it as well, we're kind of a special group of people who do a lot of, talk a lot of things around these areas, but sometimes we do forget to put on our own oxygen mask first, which can be really, really, really important. And we got to start with self before we start looking outwards as well. One of the things I want to go through is a bit of information, pass it on to you. I don't take the approach that I'm helping. I take the approach that I'm giving somebody the opportunity to get more information, to get more insights, and then that may give them opportunity to develop themselves in certain areas as well. And when everybody thinks of stress and anxiety, they kind of go like this, it's either one or the other. That's not the case. We're not bipolar type people, although there is a bipolar condition. We tend to be what I like to call, we're not black or white, we're grey. And if you're a photographer, there's 256 greys, lots of different bits and pieces in between. So that's it's a bit of a reminder about what we are as people, as humans. And as I start to talk about some of the topics that are going to come up in the next while, we're looking at actually us. We're going from the match on that side. We don't want to become this one, especially not this one, because that's burnt out. We have to be looking at where are we on the scale, and where are we going to be impacted on it, and what's going to have an impact on us. So part of today is actually going to be looking at and getting you to think about, are you prioritizing care of yourself? And a lot of people don't, because it falls under the hyperbolic discounting bias. Big word for, I like the shorter words now because I don't like investing in the future. It's, again, so as Joanne mentioned earlier on, Joanne as kids, I know some of you do. I have 2 here as well. And if they're given an opportunity to take a dip at a lucky bag or get a couple of points off and an extra half day before the end of term, they're going for that lucky bag because that's immediate, that's now. And when we're looking at managers, ourselves, a lot of things that we do fall into that hyperbolic discounting bias because we want it now. We don't tend to look for the future, and all you do is look at everybody knows that you should have a pension and you should be saving towards a pension. But everybody puts it off because it's not needed now, but now I want to get a cup of coffee. So it's one of those things to think about. And you operate the same way with how we can be managing things as well. So a couple of things I just want to walk through. Again, this is my approach. What works for me doesn't work for everybody. And the reason why I kind of put them up in this methodology is that's us. I'll put it behind here, speak here. That's a glass. That's us as our capacity. The amount of water in there is the amount of stress from the environment, stress from external stress. Elements tend to come from outside to in. How we manage it can be very, very important. But that's us. And the more stress we get engaged with, there's less capacity to build on that. What can happen is a lot of people can go, oh, you need to reduce your stress or have stress-free life. We can't. Sorry, we're humans. We live on Earth. There's a lot going on. We interact with other people. We interact with the environment. There is stress. So an important part to think about is, well, if we can't reduce it, what do we do to make this part more enjoyable so we can manage more? And the trick is make your glass bigger. And that's what all these tools and techniques are about, is actually about making the glass bigger so that you don't have to worry about what stress you're dealing with, because if you're dealing with it, there's no point in worrying about it. What we're focusing on is how to make the glass bigger so we can enjoy more. So we have more capacity to enjoy, more capacity to involve. So a couple of things just to go through. I use the word journalize because it covers a couple of different things. Gratitude journaling, absolute gold dust. Really, really fantastic. And we tend to only think about it when we're feeling shit. It's just a human thing. This is not hyperbolic discounting at its best. We need to be doing gratitude journaling when we're feeling great, because we need it when we're not. In my own practice, I would do it every evening. I limit myself to 3 things. I know some people who will do a lot of gratitude, or they only write 1 thing. The reason why I do 3 is it's a challenge. So if I'm having a good day, it can be hard to limit it to 3. If I'm having a brutal day, it can be hard to find 3. And that bit of work is really good in building up that habit. Also within journalizing, I use brain dumping as a form of journaling as well. And that's literally getting a piece of paper and spending, I use a timer. Great tool, really, really good. And I generally set 10 minutes and just write on the piece of paper everything that comes into my mind for 10 minutes. If it's out of my mind, it's on paper, it's not running around in that 600 words a minute that we talked about earlier on. And something else I would do is structure questions. So I'd actually ask myself a question, write down that question, and then spend a couple of minutes figuring out what that answer is. On self-care, self-care is critical, and it's been mentioned a couple of times already on the call. One of the most important things I find on self-care is identity. I was talking to Ronan earlier or yesterday evening, and we talked about identity and how people can imprint things on themselves. And I'll give an example is so you get somebody who will say, I'm an anxious person. They're not. They're a person who gets afflicted with anxiety from time to time. It's in the same way, if you have a broken leg, you're not broken leg. You have a broken leg. You may have anxiety. But if you put it on your identity, it's harder to remove it. And it's harder to put it to one side. But if you look at how you use that identity to serve you, it can be an awful lot more beneficial in relation to how you're looking with yourself and building that glass. That's the goal, is building that glass. Sleep, absolute key. 7 hours, if you haven't read it. Matthew Walker's book, How We Sleep, is excellent. Hard to read because he's quite, it's written in quite a lot of detail, but his interview with Joe Rogan, now 20 minutes of gold, and only listen to it if you want to frighten the absolute bejesus out of yourself. And must you be Australian on the call, Ron? I'm using good Irish phrases from time to time. Another one, and you've seen it at the start, breath work. I use breath work quite regularly during the day in between calls just to center myself, and I find the box breathing works really, really good. And mindfulness and bored moments, I would use the two at different times. So mindfulness, I want to focus on something, and breath work board moments. If I just want to figure something out, I'll just have a space in the diary. I won't have that planned. I'll shut down all the systems, have a piece of paper and pen, and see what happens, see what comes out. Yeah, it's a great one, Jennifer. When sleep is gone, you can't get it back. It's fantastic. And big one for me was 7 hours is the magic number. It was really, really important. Self-care, and again, back to that 600 words a minute, we're telling ourselves, and we're not contradicting ourselves, but we tend to be quite tough on ourselves. Be mindful of the language we're using in our internal dialogue. So, I got to do this and I got to do that. Reframe that with I get to. It's a small change, but has a huge impact. Another one is, as you know, I like using the word don't in a very structured way. So reframe and kind of remove don't from your diction if it's something that is causing you negative impact or is not serving you. And I love intention setting. So if and then. So if I go a cup of coffee, then I'll have a glass of water because I'll feel better and I won't drink as much coffee. Very powerful intention setting, very powerful habit setting technique. And it really, really ties into the cognition and the neuroscience of what we try to do with ourselves. Something else that's really powerful is scheduling. And something we leave a lot of time to accident, if it's probably the best way to describe it. I would try to schedule quite regularly. I would use Pomodoro quite a lot, which is 25 minutes of effort, 5 minutes of break, and they do that 3 times and then take a 15-minute break. Doing 4 of those sprints across the day can give you 5 hours of dedicated, concentrated work. Really, really important. What's interesting about this and what's worth considering with the topic that we're talking about is everybody focuses on the 25 minutes. Flip it. The 25 minutes isn't the secret sauce. The secret sauce is the 5-minute break. If the 5-minute break is a brilliant reward, the brain gets programmed to do the 25 minutes work before a 5-minute reward. That's the trick of Pomodoro. It's not the short amount of work. It's the kick-ass reward you're giving yourself for doing the hard work. And I would do that as well with meetings. So for meetings, I tend to schedule 50 minutes, not an hour, to give myself that 10-minute break. So it's a good meeting in 50 minutes, but I have a 10-minute reward. So it allows me to focus on that and I can build that habit of focus, which is really important. Chunking is really important, and the critical for me is the not to-do list. Or great ones for to-do lists. And if you look at a lot of research, they generally don't work, being honest. But the great thing is, if you put a negative bias on it, it gives 5 times more power, because we're negatively biased as humans. We're threat monitoring machines. We're constantly looking for threat. And if we're looking for threat all the time and we find it, bang, we act on it. So if we want to act on something, put it into that really powerful thing. So a not to-do list, and something that's really, really good for me, and I use it with my digital control, is I have a not to-do list for digital. So my phone does an off that for me, so I limit time on my apps. I put things that I will not be focusing on. And I'm using other technology at the moment to try and figure out how to move that along the line as well. But it's a really powerful tool to use. And again, time boxing is another one that's very effective for anybody who wants to kind of reduce that pressure on themselves on the scheduling side. And that's time boxing is essentially setting your tough tasks when you have high energy, setting your low tasks for when you don't have high energy. So an example for me, generally 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, it's a bit of an ebb. I do my admin then. In the morning, I'm full of beans. I tend to do my meetings. I tend to do my thinking work. I tend to do my activity work at that stage. Next is stress trigger. Actually, what's stressing you? Kind of do a bit of work on figuring what that is and how is that showing up. And here's a great one for you to think about. Stress can be positive and negative. Still using the same cup. So if you have a lot of things going on in your life that are great, so an example of that is, as from experience, if you've kids coming into the family, if you have big birthdays coming up, if you have moving house, all those things are great things, but they bring positive stress. And that stress, even though it's good, it fills your cup and reduces your capacity. So be mindful of that as well. So sometimes we kind of have a lot of direction and a bias towards positive psychology, but bear in mind that that does have an impact, and it takes out of the same cup, same glass. It's only one cup. And the last one I will put in there is accountability. Accountability is awesome. But the key to accountability is not blame. So accountability is when you want to do something and you're holding yourself accountable to it. There's two tricks I use, two techniques I use. One is accountability groups. So if I'm actually doing something, I have a couple of accountability groups that I manage, but also that I'm involved in. And on a weekly basis, I'll put out there into that group of what I want to do, what I want to achieve this week to move the needle. Now, it's not my diary of what I'm going to get done this week, because that's scheduling. But what am I going to do to move the needle a bit? So for this week, for example, one of my focus areas is, I call it 30-30-15. 30 minutes exercise, 30 minutes focus time with the kids, no distractions, and 15 minutes mindfulness. So I've put that out there that I'm holding myself accountable to that. And I would have other people who would ask me at the end of the week, did you get it done? Yes, no, well, why not? What held you back? What's getting in your way? And it's that opportunity for somebody to go through that level of accountability, which it can be really good. But the key part is, it's accountability without blame. That's where you use your language again, and you take out the word why, because why brings in the blame. And you structure your questions around, well, what's holding you back? What's the difference? What's the problem? What's the challenge? Really, really important thing to think about. And I suppose going on from that, again, knowledge is power is a phrase that a lot of people use. I propose that's actually incorrect. Knowledge is potential power, but knowledge plus action, or multiplied by action, is actual power. And that's something to really consider. And from that basis, there is something that I want to share with the group. I have a breathwork app that I use quite regularly, and it's there for you to get access to. I'll share the link afterwards as well, or you want to scan the QR code. Like on that basis, like the thinking that I would have, or the approach that I would have, is very clear that deliberate practice and considered planning gives confidence. But reflective practice is where you get the value. So something to think about, that competence doesn't come from the knowledge, competence comes from the activity. Something to think about. And I suppose at that point, I'll say shut up for a while, but open the floor if anybody has any questions or any observations. I'm happy to kick them off. Thank you very much for your time.
That was absolutely awesome, Stephen. Thank you very much. I'm frantically taking notes here. I can see everybody else writing frantically as well. So, well, let's open it up. Any questions, observations? But thank you, first of all, Stephen, for sharing so generously. That was fantastic. Jada.
Hey, Stephen. Thank you very much for all that information. I thought it was an interesting the not to-do lists. I'm actually a huge fan of to-do lists. They are what get me through the day a lot of the time. So I'm going to try the not to-do list for sure, because there's definitely a ton of things that I should not be doing that I do anyway and just let myself get away with. But I'd like to know why you don't think that to-do lists are effective.
Because they don't prioritize, generally. Most people just do a list of things and they start off at the top and work down. Okay. For a to-do list to be really effective, it has to be prioritized on what's important.
All right.
That's where time boxing tends to be a much more effective technique. And what I would do is I would make a list, but I wouldn't call it a to-do list. But from that list of activities, I would then prioritize it into what's an A, B, or C. Mm-hmm. And of that A, B, or C, what's 1, 2, and 3, similar to bullet journaling. And then I would box that into the day based on when is the best time for me to get that done.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
But the not to do list, that's a hard hitter, because what's brutal, and I'm being honest, brutal about that, is you realize what you're actually doing that you shouldn't be doing when you put your not to do list together. It's that honesty and accountability when you're doing it. Do it in a stoic way. There's no blame. There's no this is wrong, this is right. This is just a list. This is data. And it's a bit like, and you might have heard these before, it's a bit like traffic. Traffic isn't good. Traffic isn't bad. Traffic's traffic.
Right.
It's how you live. It's how you live that makes it good or bad. So
yeah, I'm almost afraid to write the list, because once it's written, then I have no excuses.
and therein lies the real power. It's taking that next step. Awesome.
It's actually it's a stress reliever. I wrote myself a list last week because I was too many things clashing in my head, too many competing priorities. When I wrote them down, the first realization I had was, oh, good God, that's far too much work for one person. So it was the realization that when you write it down, it's no wonder your brain is overloaded, because it's ridiculous. But what you just made me do there, Stephen, was put it on, one of these 2x2 matrices that I lectured when I was in work, but never actually used myself. So now I put it onto an urgent importance matrix, and I have my not to do list as well. So thank you very much for that.
Not at all. Delighted to be of help.
And I managed to scan the app while you had it up on the screen.
Yeah.
Stephen, I'm going to take one of your tips and take my 10-minute break, because I've got so many meetings scheduled, and so I have another one scheduled at 11 o'clock. So I'm going to take a break. Before I go, I just want to say thank you to everybody, and Ronan especially. It's been a brilliant challenge. I've loved it. Every minute of it has been great. And thank you to Ireland Together for hosting it. And I think we'll maybe do one for the Holistic Academy community soon as well, Ronan. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, John.
Yeah, it's been a super experience. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Cool, John. Thanks, man.
You, John.
Hey,
guys.
Bye.
That might be actually a good idea to include, is to maybe make a general rule of all meetings are 50 minutes and not an hour.
I will say I work with one organization that does that. 1 hour meetings are actually 50 minutes and half-hour meetings are actually 25 minutes. It is very hard to keep people to that. The tendency to, just this once, we'll go to the full time, happens every meeting. So it is a real effort when it's not just you to keep everyone to that slightly condensed schedule.
Do you know what I think might work?
That's where you bring in accountability.
Yeah.
That's really powerful there.
I also think if you finish the content at 45 minutes, and then leave 15 minutes for kind of Q&A or discussion, then people have the opportunity to drift away. So it's not rude. Okay, so you go, meeting's finished. If you can't stay around, then you're free to go. But otherwise, if you want to stay and chat, then fine.
And actually, I've been doing that with my meetings with them, is making it 45 minutes and 20 minutes. And having the larger extra 5 minutes is a huge shift for them. And they're looking forward. Does anyone have questions at 40 minutes? They're like, let's get it done, because I might actually get 15 whole minutes. So it really does make a huge difference when you just make sure that content is shorter.
And actually, that's just made my brain think of something around, when you talk about self-care, and we have, there's a connotation that self-care is selfish to some degree. Are we the same with our time? So when you value your time and you kind of go, I need to go now because I need 10 minutes between this meeting and the next meeting, that's somehow perceived, even by yourself, as being selfish, where it's just much easier to say to the next person, I've been running over time on my last meeting, but I really need a cup of coffee. So if you could just hold on for 5 minutes. And somehow that's more acceptable to ourselves and to society than the other side.
Something that's worked for me is that 10 minutes I introduce at the start and say, look, this is a 15-minute session. We're going to do it I've gifted you 10 minutes at the end so you can get yourself ready for the next one. And I use that language particularly because it's a gift. It doesn't have to be accepted.
And plus it changes that getting ready for the next one from seconds to actual minutes. And sometimes you can see people go, wait, I'm supposed to actually prepare. Like, and so, yeah, it really does shift.
Brilliant. Do we have any final questions for Stephen?
I think just an observation from me, Stephen. Thanks for that. It's a huge amount of information there. It's just a realization that the better we are to ourselves, it translates automatically without doing anything else to others, and the influence that has on others. So I think that's, you know, the hidden gem of putting ourselves first is that if we're responding better, others are automatically responding better in like as well without and doing anything else. So it's a really powerful way of leading by example, I suppose, too, you know.
And I had an observation, you were talking about the hyperbolic discounting. I always think about that one in my head as being a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. Right, and that's how I kind of associate it in my head. And yet the bird in the hand is worth two in the bush means that it's worth more. You know, it's almost like a self-fulfilling kind of way of remembering it, that it's worth more because it's in the hand. But yeah, so I'm just thinking about that, you know, the way we take hyperbolic discounting as a good thing. Not always.
Yeah.
In our last sorry, go ahead. Sorry, Jennifer, go ahead.
No, sorry, Ronan. I was actually just going to thank you for just the way the lineup was this month, and I think it's been very valuable to hold us accountable as well, because I found that challenging to really put it down in the app. I had to go back the day after to put it in, but I think it's really made me realize that I'm doing all these things, and it's just also sitting back and actually looking at, hold on, like I'm actually every day exercising, every day connecting to people, and just becoming more aware of that and the connections that you're making as well. I think that's been a huge shift for me, where I'm noticing as well if people check in on me, you know, and what that means actually. So it's realizing as well that when you're checking in on people and you're making a connection, or there's something up with someone in your family or your friends, like it is actually really meaningful. It's not just time that you're spending and, you know, you're going over it. It's just making those real connections and making sure that you're there for people and you listen to them. You're actually making a difference. So, you know, I think sometimes you feel like the month goes by and you haven't been always as productive, but I think that's really productive. So, yeah, I think I got a lot out of this month, and it's just been really nice to share this with everyone as well in the group.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thanks for sharing that so generously. Yeah, it's been a wonderful month. I hope this is the start and not the end. I want to share very briefly and I'm so mindful of getting everyone off the call. I want to just share one thing about how we can stay connected. So obviously there's another month of activities coming up, March for Men. So obviously there'll be events posted. I want to share just very briefly how you can keep using the mobile app. So in 60 seconds or less, I'm just going to mirror my screen. What you will notice in the mobile app, something a feature just been released. Well, it's not a new feature, but it's been available. You can go to this left-hand navigation in the app. You can now browse categories. It's got mental health and well-being. There are a whole number of things you can keep doing. You can keep doing focus, move, and connect. You can maybe decide you want to work on recording one thing you've done well today to acknowledge yourself. Celebrate the wins, gratitude. Stephen talked about recording 3 things I'm grateful for. You might want to celebrate the wins, record a win. Think about who's in your corner. Think of one person who's got your back and ask for help. So these are just a couple of templates that are made available straight away, and we can add to these over time as well. So as soon as your action finished on day 30, which is today, or if anyone joined a bit later, it'll be on the 30th day of you started. You can just start choose new actions to work on. So thank you, Mindy. Thank you, Joanne. Thank you, everybody. Stephen, for being a wonderful presenter this evening and sharing so generously. It was absolutely amazing. Been a wonderful 30-day challenges. On behalf of myself and Cred, thank you very much for the opportunity to not just do this work, but as I said at the start, connect back to everybody in Ireland has been amazing. So thank you.
Thank you, Ronan. I mean, this has been
Absolutely,
amazing and so appreciate it. And I will keep up because those categories were very intriguing. So I'll be diving into some of those.
Yeah, I think there might be a lot more for us to explore, Ronan, with the community going forward. We're going to start kicking off like a co-creation session around the Sustainable Development Goals to see how we can create impact. And Cred might be a great partner for us as we figure out how do we measure that impact as well.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jan. Sounds great.
Be in touch.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Ronan. See you
Everyone,
guys.
Take care.